Welcome to Storytelling on Social. My name is Ciara, and I'm very excited to be with you in this course to discuss how you can use social as a launchpad for your business through storytelling. I have been a marketing practitioner for 15 years, getting my start before social media took off as a tool for business. I saw the transformation of marketing happen and go from traditional mediums like print newspaper, traditional PR, and word of mouth, and move to a convergence of digital platforms such as connected TV ads, social media, and Google ads. Throughout the digital evolution of marketing, one thing has remained true. It doesn't matter where you market your business as much as it matters if you're able to tell the story of your business and convince people to care. So my focus for this course is to give you the tools to tell your story on social media specifically, which is one of the most robust and important platforms in your marketing strategy as a small business. Storytelling is a popular buzzword across marketing teams right now because, in a sense, stories make us, our business, human. The human brain is wired to understand the world through stories. They shape our perspectives, help us understand not just our place in the world, but also the place of others in the world as it relates to us. But perhaps of greatest importance is the fact that through stories, we find common ground with other people so that we can connect and communicate. We share passions, fears, hardships, joys, and sadness because those are universal truths about ourselves and the world that anyone can relate to. You could say, stories are in a sense a universal truth. As a business, we can use stories to understand other people, our customers most importantly, and their perspectives. Allow me to convince you why this is an important thing as an entrepreneur. First, today's fast-paced, overly automated, and digitally driven culture positions humanity as the new premium, as the human touch, intimate connection, and face-to-face interaction become fewer and further in between and ultimately more coveted. Second, today's audience is also saturated with tens of millions of pieces of content being shared daily. And as a business, your story is the opportunity you have in this sea of sameness to be unforgettable. In fact, research shows stories are up to 22 more times memorable than facts. Therefore, storytelling is your opportunity to increase your brand recall and favorability. Stories build trust, with studies finding 75% of consumers expect brands to make contribution to our well-being and quality of life, but only 33% of brands in North America are trusted. Storytelling is your opportunity to showcase shared values with your customer that directly adds value to their life. Ultimately, as a business, connecting with audiences and engaging them on a deeper level is what makes or breaks you. If you want to be visible, make a profit, and have an impact, storytelling is not just a nice to have, it's a must. The Global Empathy Index shows that it's no coincidence that the top 10 most empathetic companies are among the most profitable and fastest growing in the world. This includes amazing brands like Johnson & Johnson, Microsoft, Apple. Don't you want to be among them? I'm sure most of you would respond to that question with, yes, Ciara. If you didn't care about growing your business into something amazing, you wouldn't be taking this webinar to enhance your tool belt to do so. I would venture to say that now that we are a few minutes into this segment, you've started to become a believer in storytelling. At least that's my hope. It is my hope that I've acted as your pocket cheerleader here and hyped you up to tell your story. But an unfortunate reality is that there is a lot of excitement around storytelling, yet few companies in this world have the tools to craft and tell a story well in a way that matters. Where I often see businesses fall flat in this endeavor is when they shout their story from the rooftops rather than show it. They say, "I have a great story," but then forget to tell it. When this happens, it feels inauthentic and can sometimes, frankly, be boring. So I must caution against simply running to social media right now or your channel of choice before completing this course. As mentioned, taking the right approach with the right tools to telling your story on social is of utmost importance to avoid turning your audience off. So to help you build greater recall, become more visible, and create deeper connection, which in turn drive greater profit, I'm going to provide some tools and throughout this course that will give you solid grounding and a framework to think through. In the next segment, I will begin by discussing common missteps in storytelling that brands often take, sort of a what to avoid guide. Following that, I will walk you through each step of designing your storytelling strategy, including developing your tent poles, some key messages, and your messaging. After discussing how to go about developing what you want to say, we will look more specifically at how we can leverage social media and its tools to tell that story. Lastly, we'll go beyond strategy building and look at some additional ways to enhance your stories, including polishing your storytelling skills. Effective storytelling goes beyond simply saying what you believe in an Instagram post. It's a lifestyle, if you will. It's how you walk, it's how you talk. So to understand how we get there, I'd like to start by giving some pointers on common missteps to avoid in your storytelling that brands take. The first misstep I see often is when a brand makes itself the center of the story. Allow me to illustrate this one by a relatable topic. Dating. Let's pretend you've connected with a potential partner. Maybe you use a dating app, or were introduced through a mutual connection, or maybe you happen to meet randomly online or at a grocery store. Whatever the case may be, you've set a time to meet and have your first date. So the day comes, you've read or you've heard a few great things about them, and you're excited to learn more about who they are and whether they're a good match for you. You've showered, you're looking fresh, and you arrive. As you're enjoying your dinner and asking the other questions, you start to notice that every answer they give, they're talking about how they're the hero of the story. You ask where they went to high school, and they respond quickly, pointing back to being the captain of the team. Or maybe they're asking you questions about yourself, but constantly turn the focus back to them. In this scenario, most of us would feel turned off, feeling like we're not part of the conversation or being listened to, or that there's not interest in us. The other person comes off a bit arrogant, frankly, and it has really turned us off. Most likely, we probably wouldn't give them another chance on a date. The same expectation can be true of your business when customers are engaging with you. As an entrepreneur and small business, it's natural for us to want our online audience to think we are awesome and to know everything about us. We are eager to tell our story and have them buy into it. But when we focus the story on us as a business, it becomes difficult to relate to and be part of as the customer. The second misstep I often see with storytelling is not having a point to the story that you're telling. A lot of brands post a lot of content, but it's unclear what the point in caring about that content is. I'll share a secret with you. Wanting someone to buy your product is not a point of your story. That's a call to action. I call this misstep a mismanaged story program. It can be difficult to find, curate, and even refine the content you want to share while balancing the need to stay relevant and active. But too much content simply for the sake of posting will lose your audience. The third misstep is providing too much information. Particularly with a small business or a startup, we want to appeal to as many customers as possible to boost our sales. But when we try to appeal to everybody, we end up appealing to nobody. Consider this. We don't usually get in a car simply to drive around. Well, some days we do. We need our personal space, right? But usually this isn't the case. Usually when we get in the car, it's to go somewhere specific, to run an errand, to drop our kids off at school, or go to the gym, and so forth. And the same is true of your customer. Although we have some leeway with this on social media, we still want to focus as specifically as possible on the target. Lastly, the fourth misstep I often see is a weak presentation of our story. This can take many forms, whether it's that the brand is only focusing on its positives and not acknowledging its growths and its failures, or whether a brand is visually inconsistent across their channels and within their content. Whatever the case may be, it usually stems from not knowing who your core audience is, not planning appropriately, and thinking about how you can make your brand feel more authentic and relatable to them by showing your vulnerability and humanness. Okay, so we've talked here about several missteps to avoid when storytelling on social media. So I'd like to spend a few moments talking about what you can do to make your storytelling strategy a success. Thinking back to our dating analogy, we talked about how making yourself or your business the hero of the story can turn your audience off. So to avoid this, you can focus your story on them, your customer. You can use your social media content to position your customer as the main character or the hero of the story, in that they are the hero on a journey that you as a brand can help them in overcoming. When you're developing content, consider talking about what your customer wants to talk about, not necessarily what you want to talk about. Content that directly affects their lives or aspirational stories about the lives they wished they were living will give you purpose in their world. To quote Kimberly Whitler, brands and businesses need to remember that the product, service, or idea being sold are simply a tool to help empower the real hero, the customer, to reach their goal. I spoke earlier about not having a point to your story or your content, or providing too much information that your customer doesn't find relevant. A remedy for this, and our second tip, is to focus on content that makes your brand memorable and real. Rather than stats and testimonials, try wrapping your message into a story that connects with your customer and simplifies information in a way that evokes an emotional response. A good brand story is one that has a cohesive narrative that weaves together both facts and emotion to convince customers why they should buy your product. And it does so consistently across channels. The next tip that I want to share with you here has been one of my favorite tips I've ever received myself, and that's to bake social proof into your content. I spoke earlier on the importance of not just listing stats and facts in your copy, because studies show this type of information doesn't stick as much as stories. A great example of this in practice is the idea of baking social proof into your content. This means instead of saying something like, "I helped 1,000 customers achieve results," you can turn this into a statement like, "It was so great working with other women who are looking to grow their business, and I loved learning from them. I believe this is what has helped me support more than 1,000 other women. The last tip here is highly relevant for your social media content strategy, and it's your storytelling on social should be shareable. We know there are share buttons for posts, but this tip isn't about the calls to action and the buttons. Making your story shareable starts with inspiring your audience to want to tell their friends and their family about your story. Now that we have built a strong foundation for how we approach telling our brand story, let's talk about building out what that story is. In this section, I'll cover 5 steps to building your brand story so that it's ready to go for your social media channels. The first step in building your brand story is outlining the basic details about your business and offering. If you have investors in your business, or you've gone through the steps to designing your business plan, it's possible you may have some of this information handy and ready to input. In many cases, though, we are going as we're growing and haven't had an opportunity to sit and focus on articulating baseline elements of who we are and what we offer. But this is an important first step to designing effective marketing strategies, including storytelling. So take a moment and outline this using this tool. This exercise should include defining who you are, what you do, who you do it for, why you do what you do, how you do what you do, and where you're headed. The next step is to succinctly state the problem and the solution as one sentence. The problem will become the beginning of your story. The solution will become the middle of your story. This helps you stay on track and close to your narrative at every step of the way in developing your content. The next step is to build your audience profiles. The goal of storytelling is ultimately to connect on universal truths. But we can't do this until we know what those universal truths are for our audience. The objective of this exercise is not to define audiences that align perfectly with your brand at every turn. Remember, this exercise should help you identify those aspects of your customers' lives that you can relate to. There are 7 key components to audience personas: demographics, motivators, fears, barriers to purchase, communication preferences, and affinities. Now, you can certainly find examples online of personas that include more or less of these 7 components, but when it comes to identifying common ground, we want to focus on emotional truths. For example, if your customer is motivated by status and your brand values align with prestige, this could be common ground on which you can build a brand personality of sophistication. We'll discuss brand personalities in a moment in greater detail, but the takeaway for this step is to use audience personas to identify commonalities across values, missions, and emotions. You can start by answering the questions that I have here on the screen for you. These types of questions are about your key audience and help you identify that common ground. Remember, you won't align 100% with all of your audiences, so focus on identifying what you can relate to. I often get asked, Ciara, how do I go about building a persona? Where does all the information and data come from? And you can use a variety of data sources to help build your audience personas, including focus groups, feedback surveys, Google Analytics data, customer polls, and so forth. The key is to develop a persona that reflects both online and offline behavior and expectations so that we understand a full 360-degree view of our customer's day in the life. Now, I could discuss building personas for days. With a background in psychology, this is an area of marketing that I find quite intriguing, but we will move on from personas for now. So once you've developed your personas, The next step is to identify your brand personality and archetype. Customers want to do business with companies who have similar personalities to them. So selecting a brand personality and archetype will serve as a guiding light when developing your voice and visual identity that lives on your social channels. Is your brand carefree, spirited, and youthful? Or are you rough, adventurous, and athletic? Consider what will connect with your audience as a universal truth. One well-known example of a brand that has selected its brand personality and executed on it well is Dove. They know their customer well and have exhibited sincerity and innocence to really connect with them. Michael Kors is another great example. As a luxury brand, its personality is sophistication, elegance, and prestige. Part of this brand personality exercise will draw on your baseline details you've developed. To determine your personality, you'll consider what are those elements that make your brand human. What are its emotions, values, and ideas, and how does that get personified? For your brand to grow, it needs to be larger than what you simply offer, so the end customer understands and believes in what your brand means to them beyond what you're selling. The last step is to develop your messaging tentpoles that will feed into your marketing and channel strategies. Tentpoles, or content pillars, within the context of marketing, refers to the key moments and key narratives that shape or peak our content. This type of marketing approach is analogous to a tent being held up by a pole. Allow me to illustrate. You have an event coming up, and it's an annual event that your team attends. This particular event brings in a lot of business for you. So you spend considerable time in the year on pre-event and post-event strategies. The event is called a tentpole event. It sits at the peak while other smaller tactics take place to hold it up. This same approach can be applied to your brand story by identifying those key narratives that sit at the top of your pole and what the supporting messages are. How do you transform the lives of your customers? How do you impact society? These are some of the key questions to answer that can help shape your tentpole messaging. We will move on from tentpoles for now, but keep this exercise handy. We'll turn to it in the next section when we bring this to life and how we apply it to social media. In this segment, we will look more specifically at how we can leverage social media and its tools to tell that story, including both unpaid and paid tactics. Remember, we want to use our content to show, not just tell our story. I'd like to start with what you have the most control over, and that's called our organic content. Organic content does not require advertising spend, and it lives on your Instagram and Facebook stories, in your feed, Reels, TikTok, Facebook and Instagram posts, and others of the like. These are the pieces of content that live on your social channels that you have curated and developed on your own. There are many ways to use your organic content to tell your brand story. Your profile aesthetic is the first place to start. You can leverage highlights, the description, and the look and feel of your profile to showcase your values and personality. Color palette and image choice can communicate that you're bold and full of energy, or whimsical and more subdued. The description on your page can communicate what you value and what value you can add to your customer's life. You're connecting with your audience and followers on their turf when it comes to social media, and you have a matter of seconds to convey what you believe and offer and convince them to care. So your profile is an important starting point for embodying what you say you believe. In your stories and in feed posts, you can use news snippets, quotes, and anecdotes to give your audience a sense of your brand personality and values without directly promoting your product. You can use question and answer stickers, polls, and feature fan content to make your audience the hero of the story. Another great way to tell your story is to use video featuring the real humans who make your business successful. But to make this a bit more concrete and actionable, let's see what this looks like for each channel. Facebook is a great conversational space to create relationships with your customers and partners by staying active and engaged, providing useful information, and establishing content that has a good frequency and value. When building your brand on Facebook, you can leverage several primary areas of content. Location pages. This is for your personal use, where you can create and publish content. And even though this is your personal Facebook page, as a representative of your business, you can use this page to showcase who you are as an entrepreneur and the values that go into building your business. There are also branding pages, which are the business pages that allow you to advertise and see insights, build messenger campaigns, and tell your story through the use of your content, your bio, descriptions, imagery, and the tabs that you showcase. Location pages is another area you can explore for your brand if you're a brick and mortar, of course, and have a few locations. The great thing about location pages is it allows you to connect and manage all of your store pages in one central place. You can run local ads and get found in Facebook search. But I'll caution that if you use local pages, ensure there is a cohesive voice, look and feel across your other brand pages. Facebook groups is another great area for you to build your brand story. If there are common interests among your followers that you can create micro communities with, Facebook groups are a great way to do this and drive deeper connection. Instagram is one of the best channels we have in our toolkit for building our brand story because of the ability to leverage relevant, visual, and interesting content in one space. Instagram really is a highly visual channel. So not only do we have the static posts to create a visual consistency across, but also reels and highlight stories. Some great ways to leverage Instagram to tell your brand story are to use reels to showcase your personality by piggybacking on trends. You can use reels to participate in these types of trends and real moments with your own personality and point of view. You can also use reels for more short form content that shows your production, behind the scenes content, relatable sentiments, quick tips, and other more short form moments that fit within 15 seconds. This is where you can get creative and showcase that creativity to your audience. Instagram Live is another great area to leverage for your brand story. People want to know the humans behind the business name, and opening yourself up to answering their questions and becoming a real person and friend can really grow your connection with your audience and followers. Highlights are a key area to your Instagram profile because they can express who you are and what you offer within seconds. Visually brand them to match your content, but also consider how the titles of these highlights can tell your story. Highlights can showcase your product categories, but also how you're involved in the community, what others are saying through testimonial highlights, and where you spend your non-production time as a business in the community. Lastly, use your stories and integration capabilities to showcase your personality and real-time activity. The music integration can help create a mood and a vibe, and one universal truth is music moves us all in one way or another. Stories are a great way to stay engaged all day with your followers and create value for your account in their daily life. Now, I won't depart from Instagram before discussing how you can leverage your in-feed content to showcase your brand story and values. And I'll do this by sharing one of the best examples in market of a brand doing this very well. You can develop your own content as a brand, employing all the best practices we've covered so far in this lesson. But I'm inclined to believe that many of us have bandwidth and resourcing challenges as a small business. Curating content is a great opportunity to not only remedy this, but to also bring others into telling your story for you. And this is something that Airbnb does very well. Their goal as a brand is to curate wonder and awe in their community. And so they focus on visual storytelling to educate, to inspire, and to promote the stories of hosts just as much as and just as prominently as they do the locations themselves. And that approach ladders up to their goal of showcasing the most unique places around the world, both inside and out, whether it's the property itself or the story behind the property. So when you're thinking about the content that goes in your feed, think not just about your story that you can share, but the story of others that tell your story best. The next channel I want to touch on here is YouTube, which has consistently been one of the fastest growing platforms we've had in social media, with about 400 hours of videos being uploaded every minute. That is a mind-blowing stat. Traditionally, YouTube has been used to watch videos, show clips, and how-to videos, and so forth. And now, with YouTube bloggers becoming celebrities, we're seeing a movement in how audiences are looking to engage with brands here. The type of content audiences are looking for on YouTube is what I would call edutainment, which is a mix of educational and entertainment content. How-tos, question and answer forum, but in short form, movie-like series tends to be the most engaged. The challenge as a small business is that there's an expectation that YouTube content will be high quality content. So if you don't have the budget or bandwidth to support this, I would prioritize other channels first. But you can see and use these pieces of content to tell your story and design a brand page or a channel to create that visual identity that aligns with your other channels. Lastly, I want to discuss LinkedIn. We primarily think of LinkedIn as a B2B space, but telling your brand story on LinkedIn can have a great impact. There are many ways to leverage LinkedIn to grow your business. But I'm going to reserve my focus here for brand storytelling specifically. LinkedIn is a channel that tells your business's story and what you believe in by walking the talk. As with other channels, you can utilize your business page to reinforce your aesthetic and visual identity. But what's key is that your page is a space that reinforces what you believe in as a business. Thought leadership is a great way to showcase what you believe in by sharing a point of view around other industry articles, trends, and insights. You can write your own articles with a point of view or simply share others on your feed and provide commentary. You can join groups, follow hashtags, and engage with other like-minded professionals who you can learn from. You can also showcase your commitment to causes and initiatives that align with your brand mission. Diversity, women in leadership, philanthropic partnerships, for example, are all areas of interest that you can co-create articles, groups, or commentary around. Doesn't storytelling sound fun? It's my hope that throughout this webinar, you've come to see the importance of being purposeful in the content that you're posting on social media so that it best supports telling your brand's story. We know that brand storytelling matters because of changing consumer habits. Gen Z, for example, a consumer base expected to account for more than 40% of consumers by the end of this year, expects authenticity, connection, and transparency from the brands they buy into. But regardless of the demographic, we're speaking to a generation of researchers and validators looking to align with you on everything from value systems to style. So using social media to tell your story and create that connection is important to your marketing strategy. And we talked about how to do this effectively. It starts by avoiding missteps, like talking too much about yourself, and applying best practices, like making your customer the hero of your story. We talked about the importance of strategy, starting with identifying baseline elements of what your business is, does, and believes, and turning those elements into key messages you can shape your story around. This includes knowing your audience, identifying common ground, and outlining your brand personality and archetype. We then talked about how you can use aesthetic, curated content, owned content, and relevance to showcase who you are as a brand, rather than simply telling others who you are. We discussed key areas to consider on Facebook, entertaining content to use on Instagram and YouTube, thought leadership on LinkedIn, and interests on Pinterest. Building a successful story strategy will take time to learn and test and adjust accordingly. There are many strategies to employ across channels, and we only scratched the surface here with a 40-minute spiel that I gave you. But what we have covered will give you a solid foundation to build on. But I want you to walk away from today's webinar feeling empowered. You are smart, you are driven, and I believe in your ability to grow your business and personal brand into something amazing.